financial argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with FinanceAndLiberty.com, and back with us today is Andy Hoffman from MilesFranklin.com. Andy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always a pleasure. Certainly a lot to talk about this morning.
All right, well, I'd first like to discuss about the precious metal markets. In the last couple days, we've seen precious metal prices falling. What is your perspective on why we've seen gold and silver prices falling?
Sure. Actually, you can go back to the high point of the year, which was the Brexit, or the weeks right after the Brexit, when clearly the cartel or the powers that be, whatever you want to call it, got terrified because precious metals have been breaking out in essentially every currency around the world. People don't even realize when they stare at the U.S. price that just a few weeks ago, actually last week, we hit an all-time high in Mexican pesos. We hit an all-time high in Australian dollars a few weeks ago. Very close in Canada, very close in Great Britain, and even in the euro. So the trend is getting stronger, and I think there's a lot of fear out there, given how many bad things are going on right now between Deutsche Bank and all the political referendums, let alone our election, and the collapsing economies and the expanding monetary policy easing around the world. So they went into action, and as usual, they waited until China's on a holiday. China's closed all week for the Golden Week. So that's what's been going on for the last few months, culminating in what happened yesterday.
Now, you mentioned about Deutsche Bank, and a few days ago you wrote that Deutsche Bank was on the verge of collapse. Can you explain the situation about Deutsche Bank and what a collapse would mean for the global economy?
Right, and actually I want to add one further thing about the holding down of precious metals. The two key levels that any technician can see are major levels, because again, when the cartel knocks down prices, they attack the short-term technical charts to get people selling, but what they do is they inadvertently create these massively bullish long-term charts. And so what they've been fearing is what they created, which was this downtrend line that goes all the way back to the 2011, 12, and 13 raids, which at a gold was essentially $13.75 per ounce. So, a breakout there would kind of be a major long-term technical breakout. And I think that was why it double topped there in the interim and why they're so terrified of that level. And the same goes for somewhere around $20.40 in silver, which represents, it's not 50-day, not 50-week, 50-month moving average, which is again why that level was so targeted. So again, to me, those levels are the main reason why the cartel has been so crazed since Brexit, because they know that once those are broken, that the U.S. is going to join every other market in the world essentially in seeing precious metals move at, near, or eventually above the all-time highs. As for Deutsche Bank, I mean, I'm not the first person to speak about it with you. But I have been talking about it for some time. My article back, I think it was June 13th, I wrote, the Lehman of Europe is on the verge of collapse, and I've obviously since followed it up, especially after the IMF deemed it the systematically most dangerous institution in the world a few months after that. And what's going on right now is the company is falling apart. I mean, they're completely insolvent, and the fact is, whether they get a settlement of $2 billion or $3 billion or $5 billion, the fact that we're even talking about $3 or $4 billion being enough to destroy a company with $200 billion of assets should show you how illiquid they are and how terrified that everyone is of them falling, collapsing. In fact, even with this latest, BS rumor, the one on Friday, that they have a $5.4 billion settlement coming, which, by the way, it was a terrible settlement because it was only a week or two ago when the $14 billion fine was announced that every Wall Street bank was putting out articles saying, well, if they have to pay $4 billion, that's going to wipe out all their capital. Well, so why are we excited about a $5.4 billion settlement, especially when it's been already proven to be a complete lie? They haven't even started negotiating the settlement. But anyway, that was what started last week. And this weekend you also had the government of Italy sue Deutsche Bank, looking to them as a scapegoat for their own banking problems, for Banca Montepaci, the third largest bank in Italy, which is about to be bailed out or collapse itself. So, it's a daisy chain of derivatives and debt defaults that are coming up in Europe. As far as, the precious metal raid yesterday, I call it it was one of what I call a named storm attack, where it was so vicious and violent and blatant that I had to name it for posterity. There are other ones like the leap day violation and the alternative currencies destruction. Well, this one, I was thinking to myself, well, how do I name it? I mean, what is the reason why they were so scared? Are they scared that the NFP report is going to be so bad this week that it's going to end all hope of all propaganda of a rate hike? Is it because of Deutsche Bank? Is it because of the election fears or something else we don't even know? So, look, I named it the Deutsche Bank destruction. Occam's razor tells me it's the most obvious thing that they're fearing, that something bad is going to happen soon, and I believe it's going to not. I don't believe it's going to make it through the fall. And the thing that makes me even more sure of this is not just because I look at the stock and I look at the fundamentals, but because the United States government specifically targeted Deutsche Bank with the $14 billion penalty. Again, remember, the EU fined Apple $14 billion just 2 weeks earlier for tax evasion. The thing is that Apple is America's strongest company, whereas Deutsche Bank is Europe's weakest company. So to me, I think there's some politics going on here that are pretty scary and beyond me. And I think that Deutsche Bank, like Lehman, for some reason, whatever reason, maybe we'll never know what it is, has been targeted for a near-term death.
Now, I'd like to move to the presidential race because you recently noted that Donald Trump has been talking about the Fed independence and the bubbles in the economy. And you were saying that Donald Trump speaking about these issues is really waking up people to the reality of our fraudulent financial system. Now, in your view, these issues will play a much bigger role in the next two upcoming debates. Did you want to discuss about this?
Sure. And actually, I'll follow up by, you had asked me what a Deutsche Bank bankruptcy would mean. It would be the end game right there. I mean, no bank would survive. No major bank would survive this because they're all intertwined, and all the cost of funding of all the banks would explode, and as a result, it would cause stocks to crash. And I mean, this is the end game. If Deutsche Bank or anything even close to the size of Deutsche Bank goes under, and that's why there's so much at stake here at this very critical time. But as for what you're talking about, I don't believe that Trump actually has any plans in changing the Fed. I think he just is being political. He's trying to say, look, the only reason the stock market is up in this crappy economy is because the Fed's holding it up. And he's doing that to get votes. He's doing that to try to prove to people who don't know otherwise that just because the stock market's up, it doesn't mean that things are good. So I don't really put much stake into what he wants to do, given his personal interest with his businesses in strong markets, as well as the nation not collapsing on his watch. I can't believe that he or any president would seek to put a stop to the shenanigans. I mean, look, it's a Ponzi scheme. Ponzi schemes have to keep growing and have to do so exponentially to stay alive. So if you walk in and you say, "Well, I'm gonna stop all these shenanigans," well, you'll immediately have the greatest crash in history, and the economy will crash, and everyone will blame him for it. So the point is, there's nothing Trump can do to save anything. The reason I'm voting for him is just because the same reason people voted for the Brexit, and why I think a lot of people are going to vote for Trump, is because they hate the status quo. They hate Hillary Clinton, not because they think he's going to actually do anything. I don't believe he's going to do a thing. I don't think he's good for America. I don't even like the man. But I do believe that he represents change that people want, which is why you're seeing people flushing out the status quo around the world. But generally speaking, forgetting Trump, the fact is that, as I've said all along, the powers that be, the only thing that have kept them in power are money printing, market manipulation, and propaganda. And I call that the evil tripod. And, for some time now, the propaganda is pretty much dead. I mean, no one's listening anymore when they say the economy is strong, or everyone knows it's not, which is a big reason why all these people are being voted out. And as for the money printing, that's the other thing that's not working anymore, because all these things that the central banks have tried have failed, including the Fed, with all the QEs and ZERPs and NERPs, and now you have in Bank of Japan with their QQE with yield curve control and all these things. Everyone is realizing it doesn't work, and even the mainstream is writing about the credibility of central banks dying. So I think it's going to be a major issue, and the thing that's going to really catalyze it is when the United States and the places where the markets are supported the most artificially finally loses control of their markets, like most of the other world's markets have, and then people are going to put want the central banks and the bankers in general and politicians on pitchforks. So I think that I wrote I think it was an audio blog 2 weeks ago. It was called the story of 2000, the financial top story of 2017, and the century to date thus far is the end of credibility of central banks. And with that, I think you're going to see some major currency movements that are going to rock the world, and a major surge into non-financial assets, specifically precious metals.
Now, I know you've predicted that Donald Trump will win the presidential election, and you've also said that a Trump victory equals Brexit times 10. Did you want to discuss what you mean by that?
Absolutely. Look, when the Brexit occurred, it was a shock to the world because everyone believes that, quote, the powers that be are in control. They can get whatever they want. I mean, up to that election, I was one of the few people who said I believed that it was going to occur. I said I believe that the polls are rigged, and I believe that the people want the change. I think it makes logical sense for them to do it. And yet still they had the polls saying that the Remains would win, and the betting lines said that they would win. So I think it was a big surprise to the world when it did happen, because I mean, people thought there was a chance that the Brexit could win, but not a very big chance. Whereas in this case, despite the fact that Trump is polling very well, I think there's a universal belief that he doesn't have a chance. Right now, the betting lines are like 75% Hillary Clinton, and everything he says is under scrutiny. And they're just literally, the media is attacking him with a full-out blitz on everything he says and does. It's kind of like that debate where Lester Holt was just viciously attacking him and saying nothing to Hillary Clinton. So my belief is that no one believes that Trump can actually win. And so I think it's going to be an even bigger shock. But more importantly, the ramifications of the UK leaving the European Union, or heck, even the European Union breaking up, which I think a lot of people are starting to realize is inevitable, are nothing compared to the change in perception that the United States is no longer this big superpower. And I think a Trump victory is going to shock the world. Forget the fact that it's, breaks up the status quo and, kind of the Clinton-Bush cabal, which has caused so much stress on the world, and putting this wild card in office who you have no idea what he's going to do. And he's certainly not going to be listening to the same people that Clinton and Bush were listening to. But I think it's going to show the world that America is no longer the big hegemony. It's no longer the big military and economic and political power that everyone assumed it was. And I think people have been seeing the writing on the wall slowly but surely. But I think that this is going to be the shock to end all shocks when he wins that election. I think the reaction you saw to the Brexit is going to be far more dramatic in so many different ways when that occurs.
All right. Well, Andy Hoffman, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers any last thoughts you had and where they can find you online?
Yes, my thought is, look, you've been blessed with this gift by the Deutsche Bank destruction rate. I mean, the price, yesterday was one of Miles Franklin's biggest days of the year with people buying. Of course, no one ever sells. So look, use this gift. We're in some of the most traumatic times with some of the most disastrous events on the horizon. And you've been given this gift to be able to buy precious metals at 5 or 10% cheaper than they were 2 days ago, for absolutely no reason. So I would do that, and also look into every other aspect of your being about what you can do to protect yourself from what may be coming. The worst case scenario is possible, and even not the worst case scenario could be pretty bad. And as for me, again, Miles Franklin, we've been in business for 27 years without a single registered complaint. You can call us at 800-822-8080. Or go online and read me every day at milesfranklin.com for free, or email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com.
Andy Hoffman, once again, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
This video